Sometimes missing someone doesn't look dramatic. It doesn't always come with long messages or emotional speeches. More often, it shows up quietly in small choices, subtle habits, and consistent actions. A man who misses you all day doesn't always say, "I miss you." He lives it. And if you know what to look for, the signs are impossible to ignore. Let's talk about the behaviors that reveal what words often don't. He doesn't always have a reason. And that's the point. When a man truly misses you, he doesn't wait for the perfect excuse, the perfect timing, or the perfect sentence. The thought of you arrives quietly, often unannounced, slipping into his day the way sunlight slips through a window. He might be standing in line for coffee, scrolling through his phone without intention, or staring out of a bus window after a long shift, and suddenly you're there, not loudly, not dramatically, just present. And that presence creates movement, a message, a call, a simple, "Hey, how's your day going?" Not because something happened, but because you crossed his mind and stayed there long enough that silence felt wrong. People often misunderstand this kind of checking in. They think it has to be long conversations, emotional paragraphs, or constant communication. But missing someone doesn't always look like obsession. Sometimes it looks like restraint mixed with intention. He doesn't want to interrupt your life, but he wants to be part of it. So he reaches out in small ways, ways that fit into the rhythm of the day. A short text during a break, a reaction to something you posted hours ago, a random question that doesn't really need an answer. These aren't meaningless gestures. They're quiet confessions. Each one says, "You were with me even when you weren't here." There's something deeply human about this. Neuroscience shows that when someone forms an emotional attachment, the brain starts associating ordinary moments with that person. Familiar streets, songs on the radio, even silence can trigger the memory of someone who matters. The brain doesn't ask permission, it just connects. And when that connection is strong enough, it creates an impulse to reach out. Not to say anything important, just to bridge the distance, just to feel close again, even for a second. Think about how this shows up in real life. He sends you a photo of something random, a cracked sidewalk shaped like a heart, a sunset that looks ordinary to everyone else, a meal he knows you'd comment on. He doesn't explain why. He doesn't need to. The reason is already there. You're woven into how he experiences the world. And when someone misses you all day, they don't separate life from you. They bring you along, quietly, through these small shared moments. What makes this powerful is that it's not forced. He's not checking in because he's afraid of losing you or because he's bored. He's checking in because your absence is felt. And absence, when it matters, creates gravity. It pulls attention back again and again, even when he's busy, even when he's tired, even when he knows the conversation might only last a minute. There's a certain honesty in that. No performance, no pressure, just presence. And presence, in many ways, is the most sincere form of affection. Anyone can show up when there's drama, conflict, or celebration. But showing up when there's nothing happening, that's different. That's when missing someone speaks the loudest. You might notice that these check-ins often come at unexpected times. Not always in the morning or at night, when communication feels normal. Sometimes it's mid-afternoon. Sometimes late, when the world slows down. Those are the moments when distractions fade and thoughts become clearer. When he finally has space to feel what he's been carrying all day. And what he's been carrying is you. There's also something to be said about consistency. One message doesn't mean much on its own, but patterns do. When he checks in regularly, without expectation, without keeping score, it tells you something important. You're not an afterthought. You're part of his internal world. And internal worlds are where real attachment lives. Studies on emotional bonding show that people who feel connected don't communicate more, they communicate more meaningfully. Even brief interactions can strengthen emotional closeness when they're intentional. A short message can carry more weight than an hour-long conversation if it comes from a place of genuine care. And when a man misses you, intention shows up naturally. He doesn't need to plan it. He just follows the pull. Sometimes he'll disguise it as something practical, asking a question he could easily Google, commenting on something he already understands. These aren't accidents, they're doorways. Ways of opening a connection without demanding one. Ways of saying, "I'm here," while still respecting your space. And that respect matters. Missing someone doesn't mean consuming them. It means holding them gently in your thoughts. It means wanting connection, not control. That's why these check-ins feel calm, not heavy. They don't drain you. They ground you. They don't ask for reassurance. They offer it. You might also notice that he remembers timing. He checks in when he knows you're usually free, or when he knows you might need it most. Not because you asked, because he paid attention. Because missing someone sharpens awareness. It makes you listen more closely, even when they're not speaking. There's a story many people share without realizing what it means. A man texts during a stressful workday just to say, "Hope today's treating you kindly." No follow-up, no demand for a reply. Just that message stays with you longer than you expect, because it arrives at the exact moment you needed to feel seen. That's not coincidence. That's emotional attunement. That's what happens when someone carries you with them throughout the day. And here's the thing, people who don't miss you don't do this. They wait for reasons, they wait for convenience, they wait until they need something. Their communication has conditions. When someone misses you, communication becomes expression instead of transaction. There's no agenda, just connection. This kind of checking in also reflects emotional maturity. It shows he's comfortable with his feelings. He doesn't suppress them or pretend they're not there. He doesn't overanalyze them either. He simply allows them to guide small actions, and those small actions add up. They build trust. They create safety. They make you feel remembered even when you're not present. There's strength in that restraint. He doesn't overwhelm you with constant messages. He doesn't disappear either. He finds balance. Because missing you isn't about filling every moment. It's about honoring the space between moments. It's about letting you live your life while still staying connected to it. Over time, these small check-ins become familiar, comforting, almost invisible in their consistency. And that's where their power lies. They don't shock you. They steady you. They remind you that someone, somewhere is thinking about you without being asked to. When a man finds reasons to check in without needing a reason, it means you've become part of his internal dialogue. You're there when he reflects, when he pauses, when he breathes. You're present in the quiet spaces of his day, and those quiet spaces are where truth lives. He doesn't announce that he misses you all day. He shows it in moments so small they're easy to overlook, but once you understand them, you see them clearly. And when you do, you realize something simple and powerful. Being missed isn't about words. It's about being remembered when there's nothing to gain and nothing required, except the connection itself. He remembers the small things, not because he's trying to impress you, and not because he made a mental checklist of how to be the perfect person. He remembers because those details mattered to him the moment you shared them. They landed somewhere deeper than memory. They settled into meaning. When a man truly misses you, his attention sharpens. He listens differently. He doesn't just hear your words, he absorbs the spaces between them, the tone, the emotion, the quiet emphasis you didn't even realize you added. You might have mentioned something casually, almost as an afterthought. The way loud places drain you, the song that always calms you down, the fact that you get nervous before important conversations, even when you pretend you're fine. You didn't pause to make sure he understood. You didn't repeat it. You moved on. But he didn't forget. Because when someone matters, the mind doesn't filter them out. It leans in. Psychology explains this in a simple way. Emotional relevance strengthens memory. The brain prioritizes information tied to feelings over information tied to facts. That's why people forget names but remember how someone made them feel. When a man misses you, your emotional world becomes relevant to him. Your preferences, your stress points, your joys, these things stop being trivia. They become context, and context changes behavior. You see it in how he responds later, not immediately, not performatively, but naturally. He brings you the kind of coffee you like without asking. He avoids a topic he knows exhausts you. He checks in before something he knows weighs on you, even if you never asked him to. These moments don't come with explanations. They don't come with credit. They just happen, quietly, consistently. There's something deeply grounding about being remembered in this way. It feels different from being admired. Admiration can be loud and fleeting. Being remembered is steady. It tells you that you occupy real space in someone's mind, that even when you're not present, you're considered, and consideration is one of the most honest forms of care. Think about how this shows up in everyday life. You once said you hate being rushed in the morning. Weeks later, he adjusts plans without mentioning why. You once laughed about how you always forget to eat when you're stressed. One day, he reminds you, not as a lecture, but as a gentle nudge. These are not grand gestures. They're subtle shifts in behavior that say, I see you. I've been paying attention. Neuroscience supports this too. When people feel emotionally connected, the brain's mirror systems become more active. This means they're more likely to notice patterns, remember nuances, and anticipate needs. It's not mind reading, it's emotional alignment. Missing someone strengthens that alignment because absence creates reflection. When you're not there, he replays moments, he remembers conversations, he notices what stayed with him, and what stays is rarely the big stuff. It's the small human details. There's a story many people share without realizing its weight. Someone mentions offhand that they get anxious before presentations. Months later, on the morning of a big one, a message arrives. You've done this before. You'll do great. No reminder of how he knows. No explanation. Just understanding. That kind of timing doesn't come from effort alone. It comes from emotional presence over time. What makes this even more meaningful is that he doesn't just remember. He uses what he remembers to show up better. Memory without action is passive. But when someone misses you, memory becomes movement. He adapts. He chooses differently. He shows care in ways that fit you, not just him. And that's rare because it requires empathy. It requires stepping outside your own experience and honoring someone else's. This is where emotional maturity reveals itself. Anyone can repeat facts about you, but remembering how to treat you, that takes intention. It takes humility. It takes the willingness to let what you shared actually matter. And a man who misses you all day doesn't just miss your presence. He misses the responsibility of caring for you well. So when you're not around, he holds on to what he knows, and he uses it. You might notice that he brings up things you forgot you ever said, not to prove a point, not to surprise you, but because to him they were never forgettable. They were moments of trust, moments where you let him see something real, and real moments tend to linger. There's comfort in that kind of attention, not the spotlight kind, the quiet, steady kind, the kind that makes you feel safe being yourself because you know you're being seen accurately, not idealized, not misunderstood, not ignored, just seen. Data from relationship research consistently shows that feeling understood is one of the strongest predictors of emotional closeness. More than shared hobbies, more than constant communication. Understanding creates connection, and remembering small details is how understanding shows up in real life. It's also worth noticing what he doesn't do. He doesn't dismiss your feelings. He doesn't minimize what matters to you. He doesn't say, you're overreacting, about things you've already explained, because he remembers why they matter. And when someone remembers why something matters to you, they treat it with care, even if it wouldn't matter to them personally. That's a quiet kind of respect. And respect deepens longing, because when you feel respected in someone's absence, you feel valued in their presence. Missing someone isn't just about wanting them back. It's about wanting to continue the connection the right way. Sometimes this shows up in the smallest, almost invisible ways. He chooses his words carefully because he knows certain phrases shut you down. He pauses before joking about something he knows you're sensitive about. He gives you space when he knows you need it, even though he misses you. Especially then, that restraint isn't distance, it's consideration, and consideration is what separates attachment from possession. A man who misses you but still honors you isn't trying to fill a void. He's protecting a bond. He understands that missing someone doesn't give you the right to overwhelm them. It gives you the responsibility to show up thoughtfully. Over time, these remembered details create a sense of emotional continuity. Even when you're apart, it feels like the connection hasn't paused. Because it hasn't. It's been carried through memory, through attention, through quiet choices you never had to ask for. You might find yourself feeling calmer around him, even when life is loud. That's not accidental. Being around someone who remembers you accurately reduces emotional friction. You don't have to explain yourself repeatedly. You don't have to defend your needs. You don't have to shrink or perform. You can just be. And that ease is often what people miss the most. When a man misses you all day, he doesn't miss an idea of you. He misses the real you, the nuanced you, the version that exists in details, not summaries. And because he misses that version, he holds on to the details that make you who you are. That's why when he shows up again through a message, a call, or a moment together, it feels seamless, like no time was lost. Because in his mind, you were never gone. You were present in memory, in consideration, in the small ways he chose to act differently because of what he knows about you. Being remembered like that isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. But it's powerful because it tells you something simple and profound. You mattered enough to be noticed, enough to be remembered, and enough to be treated with care, even when you weren't there to see it. He makes time, even when life is busy. And that choice, quiet as it may seem, carries more truth than 1,000 promises ever could, because everyone is busy, everyone has responsibilities, pressures, deadlines, and days that feel heavier than expected. Being busy is not unique. What's rare is choosing connection inside that business. What's rare is deciding that, even when energy is low and time feels scarce, someone still matters enough to show up for. When a man truly misses you, time doesn't disappear, it rearranges itself. Not in dramatic ways, not with grand sacrifices that demand applause, but in subtle adjustments that most people would never notice. He shortens a break. He stays up a little later. He wakes up a little earlier. He finds minutes where others see none, because missing you creates a priority, not an obligation. There's a common misunderstanding that making time requires having free time. It doesn't. It requires intention. And intention is revealed in patterns, not excuses. You can hear it in the difference between "I've been so busy" and "Today was packed, but I wanted to hear your voice." One statement closes a door. The other opens one. One explains absence. The other creates presence. Psychology has something clear to say about this. Studies on emotional bonding consistently show that people allocate time based on emotional value, not availability. We don't make time for what we have time for. We make time for what matters. That's why someone can work 12 hours straight and still scroll endlessly, but also find 5 minutes to check in with the person they miss. The mind doesn't count minutes the way clocks do. It follows importance. And when a man misses you all day, you become important in ways that don't need to be announced. You feel it in the consistency, not constant communication, not endless conversation, just steady presence. The kind that says, "I didn't forget you, even when everything else demanded my attention." You might notice it in how he shows up after a long day. He's tired. His voice is quieter. He doesn't have much to say, but he still reaches out, not to entertain, not to impress, just to connect, just to remind you and himself that the day isn't complete without that small moment of closeness. There's something honest about that kind of effort. It doesn't try to be perfect. It doesn't pretend to have unlimited energy. It simply says, "You matter enough to be included, even when I have nothing left to give but a few minutes." and those minutes often mean more than hours spent distracted. Real life is full of examples like this. A man steps out of a noisy room to send a quick message. He calls during a commute, knowing the call will end when traffic clears. He checks in between meetings, not to start a conversation, but to keep the connection alive. These aren't gaps filled by boredom. They're moments protected by care. Research on relationship satisfaction shows that reliability, showing up in small, predictable ways, builds more trust than occasional intensity. Grand gestures can be memorable, but consistency is what creates safety. And when someone misses you, safety becomes a priority. They don't want you to wonder where you stand. They don't want silence to create distance. So they show up in ways that say, I'm still here. What's important is how this kind of time making feels. It doesn't feel rushed. It doesn't feel transactional. Even when it's brief, it feels intentional, because intention has a weight that time alone doesn't carry. 5 minutes of real presence can feel deeper than an hour of half attention. You can also see it in how he plans, not always far into the future. Sometimes just a day ahead. He lets you know when he'll be unavailable. He circles back when he said he would. He doesn't disappear and reappear with excuses. Because missing someone creates accountability, it makes you aware that your absence affects them and their absence affects you. There's a quiet respect in that. Respect for your time, respect for your emotions, respect for the connection itself. A man who misses you but still manages his time thoughtfully isn't trying to pull you into chaos. He's trying to create steadiness inside it. Sometimes this shows up in ways that aren't obvious at first. He declines something else. He leaves early. He chooses rest later so he can be present now. You may never know what he adjusted to make that moment happen. And that's the point. He doesn't need you to see the sacrifice. He just wants you to feel the presence. This kind of effort often goes unnoticed because it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't say, look what I gave up for you. It simply arrives. And over time, you realize something important. You never have to beg for attention from someone who misses you. You never have to chase consistency. It meets you where you are. There's also something grounding about knowing someone thinks ahead about time with you. He doesn't treat it as optional or leftover. He treats it as part of his life structure. Even when schedules change, even when days collapse, you're not squeezed in, you're included. People who don't miss you often talk about being busy as a shield, a reason, a boundary that keeps distance intact. But when a man misses you, business becomes a challenge, not an excuse. He works around it instead of hiding behind it. And he doesn't resent the effort. That's important, because effort fueled by obligation eventually turns heavy. Effort fueled by longing feels different. It feels natural. It feels chosen, even when it requires energy he doesn't have much of. You might notice that he never makes you feel like a burden. Even when he's exhausted, even when life is demanding, he doesn't sigh when you call. He doesn't rush you off the line. If he can't talk, he explains. And then he follows up. Because making time isn't just about availability, it's about follow-through. This consistency builds emotional trust. Over time, your nervous system relaxes around someone like this. You stop questioning their interest. You stop interpreting silence as distance, because their actions have already answered those questions. There's a deeper layer to this too. When someone misses you, time with you becomes restorative, not draining. Even brief moments help them reset. That's why they seek you out in the middle of chaos. Not because they expect you to fix anything, but because your presence reminds them who they are outside the noise. This isn't about dependency. It's about connection. Healthy connection doesn't demand constant access. It values meaningful contact. And a man who misses you understands that. He doesn't try to consume all your time. He protects the moments he can share with you. You might find that even when he's overwhelmed, he remembers to ask about your day. Not in a distracted way, in a real way. Because missing you keeps your inner world relevant to him. He doesn't become so absorbed in his own stress that he forgets yours. That balance matters. It shows emotional awareness. It shows that missing someone doesn't make you self-centered. It makes you considerate. You don't just want comfort. You want connection, mutual connection. Over time, these small acts of time making add up. They create a rhythm, a sense that no matter how busy life gets, there's a place where you meet, even briefly, even imperfectly. And that rhythm becomes something you both rely on. Being missed isn't about dramatic declarations. It's about being chosen in the middle of ordinary chaos. It's about knowing that even when life pulls hard in every direction, someone still reaches back toward you. When a man makes time for you in busy moments, he's telling you something without saying it. He's saying you're not just part of his free time, you're part of his life. And that kind of presence doesn't fade when things get hard. It shows up precisely when they do. He includes you in his future talk, and most of the time, he doesn't even realize he's doing it. It's not always deliberate, not always carefully chosen words meant to impress or promise something concrete. It happens naturally, the way breathing happens. When a man truly misses you, his mind doesn't stop at the present moment. It moves forward. And when it does, you're already there. You hear it in the way he speaks, small phrases, casual comments. You'd like this place? Next time we should try that. One day, I want to show you. These sentences don't come with pressure or expectation. They're not contracts, they're reflections. Reflections of how his inner world has made room for you without needing permission. This is how the human mind works when attachment is real. When someone matters, the brain doesn't compartmentalize them into a single moment or season. It integrates them. Psychologists call this future-oriented thinking, and it's a strong indicator of emotional investment. We naturally imagine future scenarios with people who feel safe, meaningful, and emotionally present in our lives. Not because we're forcing a plan, but because imagining a future without them feels incomplete. What makes this powerful is how subtle it often is. He doesn't sit you down and announce his intentions. He doesn't make dramatic declarations. Instead, you notice that when he talks about what's coming days, weeks, months, your name doesn't need to be said for your presence to be felt. You're implied, included, assumed. You might catch it when he talks about something he hasn't done yet, a movie he wants to see, a city he wants to visit, a goal he's working toward, and somehow the language bends toward you. That's something you'd appreciate. I think you'd understand that. He's already imagining your reaction, your perspective, your place beside him in that moment. That doesn't happen by accident. People who don't miss you keep their future talk neutral, detached, singular. They say, I, not we. They speak in closed sentences that don't leave room for anyone else. But when a man misses you all day, his sense of time stretches outward, and you're part of that stretch. Not because he's afraid of losing you, but because he doesn't want to imagine what's next without you in it. There's a quiet vulnerability in this. Including someone in your future requires hope, and hope always carries risk. It means believing that the connection will last, that it's worth nurturing, that it deserves continuity. A man who allows himself to speak this way is revealing trust, not just in you, but in the bond itself. Sometimes this shows up in playful ways, light comments that could be brushed off if you weren't paying attention. We'll see how that goes when we're older. That sounds like something we'd laugh about later. These aren't promises, they're glimpses. Glimpses into how his mind moves when he's relaxed, when he's honest, when he's not guarding himself. Research on emotional attachment shows that people who feel connected naturally use inclusive language. Words like wa, os, and or appear more often not as a strategy, but as a reflection of internal alignment. Language reveals thought patterns, and thought patterns reveal emotional truth. When someone consistently speaks as if you're part of what's ahead, it means you already are, at least in their heart. You might notice that he asked your opinion about things that don't affect you right now, decisions he could easily make on his own. He doesn't need your input. He wants it because your perspective has weight, because he values how you think, and because imagining the future without considering you feels unnatural to him. There's something grounding about that. It makes you feel anchored, not clung to. Included, not obligated. You're not being pulled into his future, you're being invited into it. And invitations feel different than demands. They feel open, respectful, safe. This inclusion often grows stronger when you're apart. When he misses you, future talk becomes a bridge, a way to stay connected to what hasn't happened yet, a way to remind himself and you that the distance is temporary, that the story is still moving forward. You might hear him say things like, when things slow down, or once this phase is over. And without spelling it out, the implication is there you'll still be around, not as an accessory, but as a constant, someone who exists beyond circumstances. What's important is that this kind of future talk doesn't feel heavy. It doesn't feel like pressure to commit before you're ready. It feels light, natural, almost inevitable, because it's not coming from fear, it's coming from comfort. People who talk about the future to control or secure someone sound different. Their words feel rushed, urgent, loaded. But when a man misses you and includes you in his future, his tone stays calm. There's no anxiety underneath it, just a quiet certainty that this connection matters enough to extend beyond today. There's also respect in how he does it. He doesn't trap you with expectations. He doesn't assume your choices. He leaves space for you to enter freely. That space is what makes the inclusion meaningful. You're not being absorbed into his life. You're being welcomed alongside it. Sometimes this shows up in moments you don't expect. He talks about who he wants to become, the kind of life he wants to build, and somehow his values align with what he knows matters to you. Not because he's trying to match you, but because missing you has made him more aware of what he wants long term. That's another truth people often overlook. Missing someone doesn't just make you long for them. It clarifies you, it forces reflection. It makes you ask, what am I building? And who do I want to share it with? When a man includes you in his future talk, it often means you've become part of that answer. You may notice that he remembers things you once said about your own future, goals, dreams, fears, and he references them naturally, not to remind you, but to align with you. That alignment doesn't happen without care. It happens because he's been listening, not just to who you are now, but to who you're becoming. There's comfort in knowing someone sees you as part of what's next, not just what's convenient. It creates emotional stability. It allows you to relax into the connection instead of constantly questioning its direction, because direction is being shown, not announced. Over time, this future talk becomes part of the relationship's rhythm. It doesn't escalate unnaturally. It evolves. It grows as trust grows, as shared experiences accumulate, as the idea of later becomes less abstract and more familiar. And even when the future feels uncertain, because life is unpredictable, he still speaks as if you belong in it, not because he knows exactly what will happen, but because he knows who he wants beside him while it happens. That's the heart of it. Including you in his future talk isn't about certainty. It's about intention. It's about emotional placement. It's about saying without saying, when I look ahead, you're there. And when someone misses you all day, the future doesn't feel distant. It feels connected. It feels shared. It feels like something that makes sense because you're already part of how he imagines the road ahead. He shows emotional softness around you, and that softness is never weakness. It's trust. It's the quiet lowering of armor that he didn't even realize he was wearing until you were there. Around the world, men are taught to stay controlled, to stay composed, to hold everything in and move forward without looking back. Feelings are managed, not shared. Vulnerability is delayed, not invited. So when a man allows himself to soften in your presence, it means something inside him feels safe enough to rest. You notice it in small ways first. His voice changes when he talks to you, slower, less guarded. He pauses before answering instead of reacting quickly. He admits when the day was heavier than expected, not dramatically, not with complaint, just honesty. He doesn't need to perform strength around you because he senses that strength doesn't need to be proven here. Emotional softness doesn't arrive all at once. It unfolds. It's revealed in moments when he could have deflected but chose to open instead. He tells you he's tired, not just physically, but mentally. He admits uncertainty about something he usually keeps to himself. He allows silence without rushing to fill it. These are not random behaviors. They're signals of comfort, of trust, of feeling seen without fear of judgment. Psychology explains this clearly. Emotional vulnerability increases only in environments perceived as safe. When someone feels emotionally secure, their nervous system relaxes. The need for constant defense fades. This is why softness appears around people who matter. It's not selective, it's responsive. He softens because something in you tells him he can. You might notice that he listens more than he speaks. Not because he has nothing to say, but because he wants to understand. He doesn't interrupt your emotions. He doesn't rush to fix everything. He allows space for feelings to exist. And in doing that, he reveals something about himself. He's not afraid of emotional depth. He's willing to sit in it. There's a story many people recognize. A man who never talks about his stress opens up one night, quietly sharing something he's carried alone for years. He doesn't look for advice. He doesn't dramatize it. He simply lets it out. That moment doesn't happen because he suddenly changed. It happens because the presence beside him made it possible. This softness also shows up in how he responds to your emotions. He doesn't minimize them. He doesn't say, "You'll be fine," and move on. He acknowledges them, even when he doesn't fully understand them. Especially then, that acknowledgement is emotional intelligence. It's the ability to validate without controlling. Research on emotional intimacy shows that people who feel safe expressing vulnerability form stronger bonds. Not because vulnerability is attractive, but because it's honest, and honesty creates connection. When a man shows emotional softness around you, he's choosing honesty over image, and that choice takes courage. You might see it when he admits fear, fear of failure, fear of disappointing others, fear of losing something meaningful. These are thoughts many people carry quietly. When he shares them with you, it means he trusts your presence not to judge, dismiss, or weaponize what he reveals. He believes his truth is safe with you. Softness also looks like gentleness. He becomes more patient, more understanding. He gives you the benefit of the doubt. He doesn't escalate conflict. He chooses calm over control. This isn't passivity. It's emotional regulation. It's knowing that connection matters more than being right. There's something grounding about being around someone who softens instead of hardens. It allows you to soften too. Emotional safety is contagious. When one person relaxes their guard, the other often follows. That's how intimacy deepens, not through intensity, but through mutual ease. He might also show softness in moments of joy, letting himself laugh freely, sharing excitement without restraint, allowing himself to be playful. Joy is a form of vulnerability too. It requires presence, it requires openness. And when someone feels emotionally safe, they allow joy to surface without fear of looking foolish. This emotional softness doesn't mean he's emotionally dependent. In fact, it often indicates emotional strength. It shows he's not afraid of his inner world. He doesn't need to suppress it to function. He can acknowledge his feelings and still move forward. That balance is rare. You might notice that he doesn't put on a front around you. He doesn't pretend to have everything figured out. He allows imperfection. And in doing so, he invites authenticity into the connection. You're not relating to a performance. You're relating to a person. Over time, this softness becomes consistent. It doesn't disappear when things get uncomfortable. It shows up during conflict too. He doesn't shut down. He communicates, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because emotional safety has already been established, there's something deeply reassuring about knowing someone trusts you with their inner world. It creates responsibility, but also meaning. It says, you matter enough to see me as I am. And that kind of trust isn't given lightly. When a man misses you all day, emotional softness often grows stronger, Absence clarifies value. It highlights what feels safe, what feels grounding, what feels real. And when he reconnects with you, that softness surfaces naturally, because your presence reminds him that he doesn't have to be guarded here. This is what emotional connection looks like when it's real. Not dramatic confessions, not constant reassurance, just a steady willingness to be emotionally present, to be open, to be human. He shows emotional softness around you because something in him recognizes something in you. A sense of safety, a sense of understanding, a place where strength doesn't have to be proven and vulnerability doesn't have to be hidden. And that softness, quiet and unspoken, often says more than any words ever could. Missing someone isn't loud, it's steady, it's thoughtful, it's consistent. A man who misses you all day doesn't chase attention, he shows intention. He doesn't perform love, he practices it. So if you notice these signs, don't overanalyze them, understand them. Because when someone's actions quietly keep coming back to you, that's not habit, that's the heart